Administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Take your seat, Senator Kangata. No, don't sit there. Okay, order members, honorable senators, I take this opportunity to welcome you back to the plenary sittings of the Senate. 2, as you will recall, at the sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, 17th March 2020, following a motion moved by the Senate Majority Leader relating to COVID-19, the Senate resolved to adjourn its plenary sittings from Tuesday, 17th March 2020 for 2 weeks so as to reconvene on Tuesday, 31st March 2020, and to thereafter hold one sitting in each week on Tuesdays for 2 weeks until Tuesday, 14th April 2020. The Senate further resolved to alter its calendar accordingly. Additionally, following the resolution of the Senate, the chair directed that committee sittings be suspended for a similar period of 2 weeks. Honorable senators, you will further recall that on 13th March 2020, jointly with the Speaker of the National Assembly, we issued guidelines to all members of Parliament and staff of Parliament consequent on the declaration of COVID-19 as a global health epidemic. Further to this, in order to facilitate the smooth flow of legislative business in Senate plenary and committee sittings starting Tuesday, 31st March 2020, and taking into account various measures that have been put in place by the government to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, it has become necessary that I issue guidelines to all senators and staff of the Senate to be applied henceforth until further notice. It is important to note that the plenary and committee sittings are being held after consultations with and on the advice of the Ministry of Health, who have inspected the parliamentary precincts and provided us with a report on the state of the parliamentary precincts and the conditions to be met to facilitate plenary and committee sittings. The following guidelines shall apply. 1. Plenary sittings shall be held in the Senate chamber and shall commence at 2:30 p.m. and end not later than 4:30 p.m. This is to allow members and staff to travel and arrive at their places of residence before the 7 p.m. curfew. 2. In order to ensure appropriate social distancing and necessary preventive measures, A, the chamber has been reconfigured to seat a maximum of 28 senators only. Accordingly, the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader have been requested to consult and designate the 28 senators who shall attend the Senate plenary sitting of 31st March 2020 and shall similarly do so for subsequent sittings until further notice. The Sergeant-at-Arms has been directed to ensure that only the 28 designated senators attend the plenary sitting. 4. Further through this, in order to facilitate the smooth flow of legislative business in Senate plenary and committee sittings starting Tuesday, 31st March 2020, and taking into account various measures that have been put in place by the government to combat the COVID-19 epidemic, it has become necessary that I issue guidelines to all senators and staff of the Senate to be applied henceforth until further notice. It is important to note that the plenary and committee sittings are being held after consultations. I think that is... In order to ensure appropriate social distancing and necessary preventive measures, the chamber has been reconfigured. I think I've already said that. B, senators who are not part of the 28 designated senators are requested not to come to the sitting, as the 28 senators shall be the only senators who shall be allowed into the chamber, and the 28 senators shall not at any time during the sitting be replaced by other senators. C, in accordance with the Ministry of Health advisory, senators and staff aged 58 years and above are encouraged to abide by the presidential directive dated 25th March 2020 and thus work from home. D, in accordance with the Ministry of Health advisory, immunosuppressed senators and staff and those with such chronic illnesses such as hypertension, diabetes, cancer and HIV are encouraged to work from home as they are more at risk of contracting COVID-19. E, while in the chamber, the 28 senators shall use only the designated sitting spaces in the chamber and shall, while in the chamber remain in their seats at all times. I want to repeat, because we have people, senators who are very nomadic. So I think yeah, I'm waiting for Senator Musurube. Show her the seat. Okay. Yeah. Okay, order. The Speaker's gallery and the public gallery shall not be occupied by any person except the 4 technical staffers facilitating the sitting as advised by the Ministry of Health. G, there shall be no consultation at the Speaker's chair or at the clerk's table, and accordingly, it shall be out of order for a senator to approach the Speaker's chair or the clerk's table for any purpose. And H, senators shall, while entering and leaving the chamber, observe the social distancing requirement. 3, with respect to committee sittings, the measures in paragraph 2 above shall be applied with necessary modifications. In addition, A, committees are encouraged to transact as much business as possible remotely so as to reduce the need to physical meetings. B, where it is absolutely necessary to hold a physical sitting of a committee, 1 committee sitting shall be held only in the Senate chamber or in the mini chamber. 2, so as to allow time for adequate sanitary measures to be undertaken in the chambers between committee sittings. A, not more than 1 committee sitting shall be held in either chamber or on any day, and B, committee sittings shall be held so as to end not later than 1 p.m. 3, the Senate chamber shall not be available for committee sittings on the days on which the Senate is scheduled to hold its sittings, so as to ensure that the chamber is adequately prepared for plenary sittings. Each sitting of a committee shall be staffed by 1 clerk and 1 sergeant at arms. All other committee staff shall continue to provide services to the respective committees remotely. 5, the media and the public shall not be allowed access to committee sittings. Accordingly, committees shall, where required, make arrangements to receive written submissions or responses from public. And 4, as part of the preventive measures in place, hand sanitizers and face masks shall be availed at the entrance of the chamber and the mini chamber for use by all senators and staff as they enter the chambers. 5, the Senate lounge shall remain closed until further notice. 6, there shall be no catering services provided until further notice. Honorable Senators, I urge all senators and staff of the Senate to observe these guidelines in order to ensure the smooth flow of legislative business while the COVID-19 pandemic persists. Noting that the situation continues to evolve, I shall, where necessary, provide further guidelines. I thank you. That's the first communication, and I hope that we shall observe it and lead by example. Honorable Senators, as you are aware, a number of measures... Okay, take your seat. Take a seat. Honorable Senators, as you are aware, a number of measures have been taken by the various levels of government and by various state officers to contribute towards efforts to curb the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. 2, this is therefore to inform you, Honorable Senators, and the public at large, that at a meeting of the Senate Business Committee held on Monday, 30th March 2020, the committee resolved that the Senate shall yield the sum of Kenya shillings 200 million from our budget allocation in the current financial year 2019-2020 to aid in the efforts of the government in combating the pandemic. Honorable Senators, 3, the Senate therefore requests the Parliamentary Service Commission to take the necessary administrative measures to yield the stated sum from the budget of the Senate to the National Treasury to be reallocated and utilized in efforts to combat the pandemic. I thank you.
Order number 3, messages.
Honorable Senators, message from the National Assembly on the passage of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2020. Honorable Senators, I wish to bring to your attention the attention of the Senate that on Friday, 20th March 2020, pursuant to Standing Order number 41.3, the clerk delivered to me a message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2020. The message, which is dated 18th March 2020, was received while the Senate was on recess and was transmitted to all senators on 23rd March pursuant to Standing Order number 41.5. Further, pursuant to the said Standing Order, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Orders 41.1 and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2020, was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 17 of 9th March 2020 as a bill to provide for the equitable division of revenue raised nationally between the national and county government in 2020-2021 financial year. And whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the bill on Tuesday, March 17th, 2020 without amendments in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution and Standing Orders 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby refer the said bill to the Senate for consideration. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order number 157, which requires that the bill which originates in the National Assembly be proceeded with by the Senate in the same manner as a bill introduced in the Senate by way of first reading in accordance with Standing Order number 139, I hereby direct that the bill be read a first time today, Tuesday, 31st March 2020. I thank you.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The Leader of Majority.
Huh? Yeah, okay. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these are interesting times. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following report on the table of the Senate today, Tuesday, 31st March 2020. The report of the Mediation Committee on the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 11 of 2017, and B, report of Mediation Committee of the County Government's Amendment number 2, Bill, Senate Bill number 7 of 2017. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give the following notice of motion, which is, Mr. Speaker, adoption of the report of Mediation Committee.
What's your point of order, Senator Cheriot? Leader, take your seat.
Oh, yeah, okay. Mr. Speaker, apologies. I wouldn't wish to have interrupted the leader of majority as he moved this motion that has brought us to the House this afternoon. But there's an issue of great national importance that I wish to bring to your attention. And as Parliament, this is not an issue that I think we can either wish away or delay any further. I speak here with a very heavy heart, Mr. Speaker, that I want to bring to your attention the existence of two teams that are working at cross purposes in trying to serve our country during this very difficult time. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that you had earlier on, about 2 weeks ago, that information had been brought to this House of the existence of a number of us who had traveled out of the country. We came back on the 8th of March 2019, observed the Ministry of Health guidelines. For 14 days, they kept on calling and checking up on all the members of Parliament and the staff that had accompanied us on that particular trip. After the 14th day, which was on the 23rd of March 2020, Mr. Speaker, Ministry of Health gave us a clean bill of health, allowed us to resume our normal lives, but of course with caution, just as is expected of each and every one of us. But yesterday and today, I have received distress calls, Mr. Speaker, from members of staff of Parliament who had traveled with us on that particular trip. That there is a team from the OP referring to itself as a multi-agency team that is moving around and picking members of staff of Parliament from their houses and forcing them into quarantine at KISPS in Kasarani, Mr. Speaker. Upon receiving this information, we notified the clerk of the Senate, who's a secretary of a PSC, and they reached out to the Ministry of Health. And to our shock, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health has made it categorically clear to us that they are not aware of any team that is supposed to be moving around and addressing citizens, picking them from their homes and setting them into isolation. As we speak this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, one of our staffers, their home is under siege. This particular team is before their house. They are insisting that they must go away with her, and that, those are their instructions. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, this brings a very difficult issue which I want to seek your guidance on. First of all, as a member of Parliament, and also secondly, as a Commissioner and Chair of the Staff Welfare, who's in charge of the welfare of the staff of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, that if in going about their duties, of course, they'll be exposed to one or any other hazards, but this is not the kind of hazard that they wish to be exposed to. The gentleman that they picked yesterday, Mr. Speaker, after religiously following the 14-day isolation guideline, was picked together with his wife and a young child of 4 months. They have been mixed together with people who have arrived in the country the last 3 or 4 days. Today is the second day. No test has been conducted on them. They have not even been allowed to access the bags that they came with from their house. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to beg your indulgence. Either you give directions that the Minister for Interior and the Minister of Health, one, assures the country that there is only one center of command, and this being a health crisis, that this is an issue that is being handled very professionally by the Ministry of Health, and therefore asks those police officers to back off from this exercise. And second, and most importantly, is that they file a response with this House confirming to Parliament and by extension to the Republic of Kenya that there are no two teams that are working at cross purposes and therefore risking. If this confusion is allowed, Mr. Speaker, this is a very dangerous issue, because police officers are police officers. You saw what they were doing to people in Likoni. Devoid of the fact that we've been told to social distance, they are grouping people together. This can really get out of hand. Therefore, I request, Mr. Speaker, that you give proper directions on this particular issue before we proceed with the business of the day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Linturi.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think, Mr. Speaker, I just want to weigh into what Senator Cheruiyot has just raised. And for...
What's your point of order, Senator? Okay, although he's still on a point of order. He's on a point of order.
Yes, but he's out of order.
Let him finish, then I give you an opportunity.
We cannot wait. Huh?
Proceed, Senator.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I rise to add to what Senator Aaron has just brought to this House, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, this House represents or is a House composed of the representatives of the people of this country. And it is this House that can be able to bring up issues that are so pertinent to the people that we represent, that affect them on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker. And the fact that we are out there for the last 2 weeks, we've been able to note one or two things that are not correct. And Mr. Speaker, when we hear that police officers or the Ministry of Interior is going into the private homes of individuals who are suspected to have been traveled out and have been cleared by the Ministry of Health, Mr. Speaker, I'm left wondering, Mr. Speaker, because I don't think there is anybody that is immune to contracting this kind of a virus or a disease. And where they loiter in the night, who they interact with, we do not know. And where people have taken directions from the ministry and have decided to isolate themselves for 14 days, it is completely unfair. Mr. Speaker, time has come when we must make a decision and must get a report from those people that are behaving in this kind of a manner, because, Mr. Speaker, it is not correct, it is not right. We must make a decision, and the correct message must get out there that something has been done, and we must have one command center that has to deal with this kind of a situation.
Okay, order, members. You know, we have very limited time. I want to make a ruling on what Senator Cheruiyot said and what Linturia said. This is a grave matter, and all of us are concerned as leaders. And any effort must be properly coordinated, because it's at such times that people take advantage even to produce fake sanitizers, fake masks, and people can even go arresting people for no reason under the guise of fighting corona. So I'm directing that the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Health present to my office within 2 days a report on the teams that are mandated to work on, to fight this coronavirus, so that we don't have two teams working at cross purposes. It is so directed. Senator Murkomen, proceed.
Well done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying excellent, an excellent ruling by the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am speaking on behalf of the members. They are happy to know that you have made that determination, and we look forward to that, after which you will, in the usual manner, and particularly online, you will communicate the same information to all of us so that we know how to behave, and also to the Republic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give the following notices of motion. First, Mr. Speaker, I give the notice of motion. One, the adoption of the report of the Mediation Committee on the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 11 of 2017, that the Senate adopts the report of the Mediation Committee on the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 11 of 2017, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 31st March 2020, and pursuant to Article 113 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 161.3 of the Senate, Standing Orders approves the mediated version of the bill. Two, Mr. Speaker, that the Senate adopts the report of the Mediation Committee on the County Government's Amendment number 2, Bill, Senate Bill number 7 of 2017, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 31st March 2020, and pursuant to Article 113 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 161.3 of the Senate, Standing Orders approves the mediated version of the bill. 3, Mr. Speaker, I give also the following notice of motion that aware that the coronavirus COVID-19 has been declared a global health pandemic, resulting in the unprecedented global health crisis that has now manifested internationally in over 184 countries and territories, with escalating numbers of new cases being reported, with over 700,000 confirmed cases and over 30,000 deaths worldwide. Cognizant that the government and health authorities in the affected countries have taken serious measures aimed at containing the spread of the pandemic, mainly through travel and behavioral restrictions, appreciating the policy measures and interventions taken by the government through the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus in containing the spread of the pandemic and cushioning Kenyans against the economic effects of the pandemic, including the upscaling of the medical facilities, imposition of travel restrictions, suspension of learning in all education institutions, changes in fiscal and monetary policies, and reinforcement of behavioral protocols. Cognizant that health services and other service sectors key to the implementation of the pronounced policy measures and interventions are devolved functions. Further cognizant that some of the pronounced policy measures and interventions require legislative intervention and approval, recognizing the need for integrated and multi-sectoral intervention by all levels and arms of government and sectors in the society towards the harmonized comprehensive response to the pandemic, noting the bipartisan legislative approach taken by legislature in other jurisdictions in enacting legislation towards the containment of coronavirus and its attendant economic effects. Conscious of the need to complement the efforts of the national government in containing the spread of the pandemic and cushioning Kenyans from the shocks arising from the pandemic, the Senate resolves to 1. Laud the national government for measures it has so far put in place in combating the spread of the virus. B. Commend and appreciate all healthcare workers in the country for their selfless effort, commitment to service, care, and compassion towards persons who have been infected or affected by the virus. Call upon the national government to expand the membership of the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus to include representation by Parliament, the Judiciary, the Council of Governors, the media, and the private sector. Establish an ad hoc committee of the Senate which shall oversight actions and measures taken by the national and county governments in addressing the spread and effect of COVID-19 in Kenya, and shall address the following among other matters: provision of testing and medical equipment, including adequate ventilators in referral hospital and at least one public hospital in each county, provisions of adequate isolation centers and intensive care units facilities in each county, measures to ensure continuous supply of food and other essential commodities at affordable prices, measures to enable learners in educational institutions to continue with their studies, measures to ensure protection, safety, and well-being of healthcare and other frontline workers, enhancement of capacity and flexible deployment of healthcare staff, financial assistance to vulnerable persons and groups, protection of residential and commercial tenants, establishment of stimulus package for the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, easing of legislative and regulatory requirements for doing business, measures to protect employees from retrenchment and job losses, uniform policies and procedures aimed at slowing and eventually stopping the spread of the virus. E. Appoint the following senators to ad hoc committee: Senator Johnson Sakaja, CBS MP; Senator Michael Malingwa Mbito MP; Senator Abshiro Soka Halake MP; Senator Mithika Linturi MP; Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni Senior Counsel MP; Senator Architect Sylvia Mueni Kasanga MP; and Senator Muinyi Haji Mohamed Faki MP. And that the committee tables a progress report within 7 days, and thereafter tables a progress report on a weekly basis, and subsequently tables a final report within 6 months. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2020, a bill for an Act of Parliament to to provide for the equitable division of revenue raised nationally between the national and county governments in the 2020-2021 financial year and for connected purposes. Order number 9, motion, comprehensive national response to the COVID-19 situation.
Okay, Honorable Senators, the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2020 has just been read a first time, and pursuant to Standing Order 140, I direct that it be committed to the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget. The committee is required to scrutinize the bill and facilitate public participation on the same and table a report on Tuesday, 7th April 2020. Honorable Senators, owing to the importance and urgency of this bill and pursuant to Standing Order 137 and 181(3) of the Senate Standing Orders, I further direct that the bill be listed in the order paper for Tuesday, 7th April 2020 for consideration at second reading, committee of the whole, and third reading. I wish to remind the committee that in discharging this mandate, the guidelines that I issued regarding the conduct of committee meetings during this time of COVID-19 shall strictly apply. I thank you. Next order. What's your point of order, Senator?
Mr. Speaker, because of the issue which is at hand and the motion which is coming, as a Committee of Health, there's a statement we wanted to give to the Senate and also the country, and the chairman is requesting that we be given that opportunity. Thank you.
The chairman is okay. Order. We are past that order, and in any case, the chairman is just sitting in front of you. Why didn't he raise this? Pardon? But okay, leader of majority. Then we will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Order, maybe before you contribute, once the motion is on, I'll give the chair an opportunity to say something regarding that. Leader of majority.
This is not fair.
Mr. Speaker, Senator Dr. Ali is a respected senator in this house, a medical doctor, and I delved into his CV yesterday. Very impressed. So, Mr. Speaker, I know he will take the right time to address those issues. And it's important for all of us to move as a team. This is a very important motion. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion, which is that aware that the coronavirus COVID-19 has been declared a global health pandemic, resulting in an unprecedented global health crisis that has now manifested internationally in over 184 countries and territories, with escalating numbers of new cases being reported, with over 700,000 confirmed cases and over 30,000 deaths worldwide. Cognizant that the government and health authorities in the affected countries have taken serious measures aimed at containing the spread of the pandemic, mainly through travel and behavioral restrictions, appreciating the policy measures and interventions taken by the government through the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus, NERC, in containing the spread of the pandemic and cushioning Kenyans against the economic effects of the pandemic, including an upscaling of medical facilities, imposition of travel restrictions, suspension of learning in all education institutions, changes in fiscal and monetary policies, and reinforcement behavior protocols. Cognizant that health services and other services sectors key to the implementation of the pronounced policy measures and interventions are devolved functions. Cognizant that health service and other service sectors key to the implementation of pronounced policy measures and interventions are devolved functions. Further, cognizant that some of the pronounced policy measures and interventions require legislative intervention approval, recognizing the need for an integrated and multi-sectoral intervention by all levels and arms of government and sectors in society towards harmonized comprehensive response to the pandemic, noting the bipartisan legislative approach taken by legislature in other jurisdictions in enacting legislation towards the containment of coronavirus and in attendant economic effects, conscious of the need to complement the efforts of the national government in containing the spread of the pandemic and cushioning Kenyans from the shocks arising from the pandemic, the Senate resolves to laud the national government for the measures it has so far put in place in combating the spread of the virus, commend and appreciate all healthcare workers in country for their selfless effort, commitment to service, care and compassion towards persons who have been infected or affected by the virus. Call upon the national government to expand the membership of the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus to include representation by Parliament, the Judiciary, the Council of Governors, the media and private sector. Establish an ad hoc committee of the Senate which shall oversight actions and measures taken by the national and county government in addressing the spread of and effects of COVID-19 in Kenya, and shall address the following among other matters: provision of testing and medical equipment, including adequate ventilators in referral hospitals and in at least one public hospital in each county. Provision of adequate isolation centers in intensive care unit ICU facilities in each county. Measures to ensure continuous supply of food and other essential commodities at affordable prices. Measures to enable learners in education institutions to continue with their studies. Measures to ensure protection, safety, and well-being of the healthcare and other frontline workers. Enhancement of capacity and flexible deployment of healthcare staff. Financial assistance to vulnerable persons and groups. Protection of residential and commercial tenants. Establishment of a stimulus package of the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Easing of the legislative and regulatory requirement for doing business. Measures to protect employees from retrenchment and job losses. Uniform policies and procedures aimed at slowing and eventually stopping the spread of the virus. Appoint the following senators to ad hoc committee: Senator Johnson Sakaja, CBS MP; Senator Michael Malinga Mbito, MP, who is also the chair of the Health Committee; Senator Abshiro Soka Alake, MP; Senator Mithika Linturi, MP; Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, Senior Counsel, MP; Senator Architect Sylvia Mweni Kasanga, MP; and Senator Muinyi Aji Mohamed Faki, MP. And that the committee tables a progress report within 7 days, and thereafter tables a progress report on a weekly basis, and subsequent tables final report within 6 months. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to first of all start by thanking you and thanking the Senate for taking this step, and particularly in its own wisdom, the Senate decided that we were meeting today and meet again next week on Tuesday, and thereafter we will determine the calendar of events. Mr. Speaker, there has been misconception out there, and it has gone to many members of the public, that Senate is no longer at work, that by virtue of not convening here, we are not working. Far from it, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say this because I want to demonstrate, Mr. Speaker, what other senates and parliaments in the world have done, so that people can appreciate that, Mr. Speaker, this is not just confined to the Parliament of Kenya. It's a response to this pandemic, Mr. Speaker, which response is global. In Denmark, Mr. Speaker, in Denmark, the Parliament itself made, and the Speaker, like you did in your direction, made certain provisions that Parliament will not have more than 10 people, because there's a regulation, there's a provision in the whole country that not more than 10 people should be sitting in one place. So the Speaker made provisions that the Parliament should work and utilize online communication in all its deliberations, Mr. Speaker, and decision making online, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in France, the leader of opposition, the leader of the government side, or the spokesman of the government side, and Mr. Speaker, the spokesman of the opposition side, two of them only come to the House. And Mr. Speaker, take questions from their members and come and present to the House. And if they have a question to a minister, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, they designate a few members of Parliament that are able at any given time to come and ask those questions. In Germany, Mr. Speaker, they reduced the quorum to 25%. Mr. Speaker, I'll again change the regulations and the rules. In Ireland, Mr. Speaker, they did exactly the same, reduced the quorum. But the interesting one is Sweden, Mr. Speaker, which has 349 members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, the Swedish parliament decided that they can only have 55 members participate in the chamber and in voting, Mr. Speaker, and making decisions. They reduced their Mr. Speaker, their quorum. The same has been done in Australia. The same in New Zealand, Mr. Speaker, where we borrowed this approach that we are having here. The New Zealand Parliament decided to close, and then they established, Mr. Speaker, an ad hoc committee like ours, whose responsibility, Mr. Speaker, was to deal with the issue of the epidemic. It's called an Epidemic Response Committee. And, Mr. Speaker, its role is to make sure that they collect all the information that Parliament needs and advise the Parliament itself, so that then decisions will be made from time to time by a few members of Parliament. So I want to tell the nation that the first thing they need to appreciate is that we haven't abdicated our duty. In fact, most of these members of Parliament have been debating and contributing to the issues of COVID online. Mr. Speaker, even sometimes our debates have gone up to almost 2 a.m., Mr. Speaker, finding solutions, how best we should come to the House, what the Health Committee should do, what the Finance Committee should do. And, Mr. Speaker, most of those suggestions have led to this motion, Mr. Speaker, to your communication, and to many other decisions that are going to be made going forward. So Parliament and Senate, for that matter, is alive and is working, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I appreciate the fact that you directed the Finance Committee to continue working within the confines of your communication, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that they get public views on the issues that are related to, Mr. Speaker, to the division of revenue. Number two, Mr. Speaker, there is a feeling that if we form this committee, then it takes mandate of the standing committees. Mr. Speaker, that is far from the truth. The Health Committee has not been suspended. So the health issues that are related to COVID, the Health Committee should continue, Mr. Speaker, performing its responsibilities through and within the guidelines that you have provided, Mr. Speaker, and address those issues. Because, Mr. Speaker, it is important for members of this House and the members of the public that a standing committee does not need to come to the chambers to get another mandate. They got their mandate, Mr. Speaker, 2.5 years ago when that committee was established, Mr. Speaker. And that committee, the only thing they need to do is to come here and bring for us reports that they have done this, they want to report to the House. They have done this, they want to report to the House. They want the support of the House in making certain deliberations. And I want to request the Chair and the Vice Chair here, we want to see you working. We want to see you in these meetings with the Cabinet Secretary. I'm very grateful. I know many senators here who have engaged the Cabinet Secretary of Health directly. And I want to say here, Mr. Speaker, that we want to appreciate Senator Mutahi Kagwe because of his receptive approach, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say without fear of contradiction, he has given a good name and good face to the House of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, that a senator and a former senator, Mr. Speaker, can be more receptive to a crisis that we are dealing with like this one. And I'm sure if the chair of the Committee of Health, the chair of the Committee of Finance, the chair of Committee of Labor, Senator Sakaja, or any other person here wanted to approach that Cabinet Secretary, he would be more than willing for us to approach and contribute to the process that is ahead of us. Those are the opening remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make so that when we are debating here, no one should imagine that, Mr. Speaker, this committee we are establishing is going to take over the responsibilities of any of the committees. Mr. Speaker, we are establishing another committee that, Mr. Speaker, precisely because we are unable ourselves as a whole House to sit and to think through the various legislative and policy interventions. But because we are able to contribute online, Mr. Speaker, we are able to contribute by calls. This committee will collect all our contributions, Mr. Speaker, with the contributions of other Kenyans, reduce some, Mr. Speaker, to motion, reduce others, Mr. Speaker, to a bill, and, Mr. Speaker, where necessary now, when we come back, either on Tuesday next week or the other sittings, Mr. Speaker, we will convene in this chamber and pass either the motion where need be, policy positions where there is need, Mr. Speaker, and also, Mr. Speaker, a bill where there is need. Number two, Mr. Speaker, even though we have formed this committee of 7, We want to encourage, Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly when they convene next week, and Mr. Speaker, I have reliable information in the public domain that they are going to convene next week, to similarly form a similar committee. And we utilize the standing orders of both houses, Mr. Speaker, for the two committees to have joint sittings. This is, Mr. Speaker, a moment of crisis. It's not a moment for us to demonstrate supremacy battles, that we have an upper house or a lower house, that, Mr. Speaker, we have a more superior house, we have a more superior team than the other. We have just initiated a process. And we have said, Mr. Speaker, to our brothers in the National Assembly, so that we have one united, joint position on the issues that are affecting the people of Kenya, that, Mr. Speaker, we can pass together in form of legislation, or, Mr. Speaker, in form of policy, Mr. Speaker. I requested that the leader, and I will consult with the leader of majority in the National Assembly, so that, Mr. Speaker, they can form a similar committee, Mr. Speaker, and once the similar committee is made, they can have a joint sittings, and whatever bill they are going to bring, Mr. Speaker, we pass together. I had the privilege with Senator Mutula, Senator Orengo, and I don't see the others who are here. I think a few of us have remained, Mr. Speaker, whom we were selected to be in a joint committee to deal with the election matters, electoral issues, Mr. Speaker, across the country. That committee had members between this House and the National Assembly. And I'm very proud of the work we did in the election laws. And, Mr. Speaker, if that joint, Mr. Speaker, process is applied, we are going to achieve a lot as Parliament. Number three, Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest a few things that, Mr. Speaker, the committee should be able to look at. The committee, Mr. Speaker, should be able to look at ways and measures, as the motion says, of cushioning Kenyans from the impact of this very serious pandemic. And in that case, Mr. Speaker, they must have broad-based stimulus package that will capture the needs of the people of Kenya, that will capture, Mr. Speaker, the desires of the poor of the poor. Mr. Speaker, I said last time when I moved a motion, if we are not going to guarantee food to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, if we are not going to guarantee food to Kenyans in, Mr. Speaker, Mathare slums, they will walk to Mudaika and get food for themselves, Mr. Speaker. If we are not going to guarantee food for Kenyans who are living in Kibera, Mr. Speaker, they will walk on foot, Mr. Speaker, to Karen, and they will get food for themselves. Mr. Speaker, you saw that in Italy, you saw that in other parts of the world, Mr. Speaker, that are already these measures that are being taken, which are important to make sure that we contain the disease in terms of a lockdown, Mr. Speaker, are having other counter, Mr. Speaker, repercussions, which include, Mr. Speaker, the fact that people are lacking food to eat. So this committee should work together and come with us with the measures to ask themselves, how best are we going to contain the spread of coronavirus, Mr. Speaker, COVID-19, and at the same time guarantee, Mr. Speaker, that there is food. In doing so, we must, Mr. Speaker, listen to various voices. Mr. Speaker, I have read, Mr. Speaker, contributions of one David D, Mr. Speaker, a person I never agree with politically, but, Mr. Speaker, we must be able to listen to proposals that various Kenyans are going to give. I have read, Mr. Speaker, there is a citizen from my county called Cherotich Sei, Mr. Speaker, very serious critique of myself, and who never supported my political views. But, Mr. Speaker, we have had many discussions with her, Mr. Speaker, about what are some of the measures, because she was, Mr. Speaker, she worked in an emergency situation in Ebola, in other parts of the continent, Mr. Speaker. We must listen to these people we don't even agree with. We must give them an opportunity to give all these proposals for us. And I have read some of these proposals are very interesting, Mr. Speaker, especially when we say we must deal with how do we ensure that we have cash transfer.
What's your point of order, Senator?
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I did not want to disrupt.
Press your.
Sorry. Can the minority whip from the other side behave, Mr. Speaker? He's speaking across every time instead of addressing the chair. Mr. Speaker, while I don't want to disrupt the good flow of the majority leader, but we came here to also contribute to this debate. Could you give the majority leader some time so that others can also contribute? Because if he continues like this, we will not have any time to talk. Thank you.
Okay, what he's saying, majority leader, is that compress your...
Mr. Speaker, I haven't even started moving the motion. You know, I only read the motion. I haven't even moved. But we have discussed with the Speaker, and I'm cognizant of the fact that I can't use the 1 hour. I will use maybe a further 15 minutes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have also discussed with the person replying, so that he can use only up to 10 minutes, then the others can contribute. This is, and to mitigate this situation, Mr. Speaker, I am not going to reply. I am not going to reply to the motion, Mr. Speaker. To the contrary, I'll give my deputy to reply, so that at time she would have done to contribute, she will do the reply. So, Mr. Speaker, can I proceed?
But you cannot take 15 minutes. Take maybe, so that other people also have an opportunity. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Senator Sakaja.
Yes, Senator Sakaja.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, cognizant of the fact that the leader of majority does have some special provisions in terms of time, this sitting is ending at 4:30 in 1 hour. Mr. Speaker, I ask that you give directions in terms of how many minutes each member will take, even after the leader, who I know will soon finish. Otherwise, if we are 30 members and we have only 1 hour, 60 minutes, it is 2 minutes per person, Mr. Speaker, then there will be no contribution. If not, Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority and the leader of minority can agree on a set number of members to contribute. Otherwise, we will not make any meaningful contribution with it 1 hour, because we have 1 hour. In 2 minutes, you can say nothing. In 3 minutes, you can say, you really say nothing of note.
Senator Mutula, Jr.
Speaker,
order members.
Being in this mask is a lot of problems. And being in a curfew situation is even worse. I propose that you allow the majority leader another extra 3 minutes to finish, because the motion is self-explanatory. Even getting the members on this side and limiting others from coming to Parliament today was already a challenge. Some are already cursing us, and I think the majority leader must be guided. Thank you.
Majority leader, please take 5 minutes, so that then we are able to give others an opportunity.
Mr. Speaker, if I take 5 minutes, I will not even be able to make the. Mr. Speaker, we must also appreciate that my role in this assignment ends with the formation of this committee. The rest of the committee members will ventilate as they serve us. So I beg you 10 minutes. Mr. Speaker, so that I don't need to come back with a reply. 10 minutes.
Do it in 5 minutes, Senator. You can see the mood of the House. Just try to compress what you can.
We can't proceed like that. I will not even have said anything. I read the motion all through.
Okay, leader of majority, I'll give you 7 minutes, but please move with speed.
Okay, Mr. Speaker. So I said that the first thing we must be able to do is to listen to as many voices of Kenyans as possible, to ensure that these issues are captured, particularly the issues that are dealing with the poor people. Mr. Speaker, we must also deal with, as a House, ensure that we increase the cash transfer that is going to, Mr. Speaker, to families that are vulnerable. And my proposal is that we must support the relevant ministry, Mr. Speaker, that is of Labor, to ensure that the cash transfer reaches to at least 10 million families to deal with the situation that is in the country. We must also, Mr. Speaker, deal with the issue of water. Water and sanitation becomes a big challenge. Mr. Speaker, the committee should be able to make recommendations on how best the government at this time will expeditiously deliver water, especially to the vulnerable areas and in slums, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the issue of farmers. Mr. Speaker, as we continue dealing with this problem, food must be able to reach to as many Kenyans as possible across the country. And for us to continue getting food, the farmers must continue producing, Mr. Speaker. And we must continue providing for opportunities for these farmers to deliver the food to the centers that are required, places that are required, Mr. Speaker. I suggest that, Mr. Speaker, a stimulus package be directed to farmers to ensure that also they produce food, cheap food, that will be able to serve as many Kenyans as possible. Mr. Speaker, I also suggest that we must deal with hiring more doctors and nurses Mr. Speaker, we have a big problem. This issue is going to give us a big problem in the side of hiring medical personnel. Mr. Speaker, the resources that have been put for this emergency should go towards hiring more medical personnel, Mr. Speaker, even if it means in a contract for 2-3 years. And Mr. Speaker, the government should work expeditiously to find ways of graduating all the medical students who are in the final year, Mr. Speaker, so that they can get out of university to go back, Mr. Speaker, to the field to help as many people as possible. Mr. Speaker, we must also think about creating and establishing field medical centers like the ones we saw in Nigeria, Mr. Speaker, where they converted Stadia to field medical centers. And Mr. Speaker, we should have at least 4 field medical centers in Nairobi to be able to deal with this situation. And we can have Kasarani, we can have Nyayo, we can have CT Stadium, Mr. Speaker, and maybe it Kamtoyoyo or any other place that will be designated by the relevant committee. Mr. Speaker, we must also find ways of incorporating matters of mental health. Many people are suffering, Mr. Speaker, for being told you are going to be confined in one space in the house. Some didn't even have good relationship among themselves, Mr. Speaker. Some, Mr. Speaker, are finding it difficult to think about what will happen to their children when the food they have comes to an end. Psychosocial support must be, Mr. Speaker, ingrained in this very important venture. Mr. Speaker, I want also to suggest that, Mr. Speaker, tax and exemption should be visited upon all those who are producing, Mr. Speaker, essential goods and services, goods specifically, Mr. Speaker, so that then these goods can reach people in a very cheaper way. Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that we want coordinated and joint communication, Mr. Speaker. Just like you said and Senator Aaron said earlier, we want to ensure that communication that goes to the public is joint, accurate. But, Mr. Speaker, it is not also time to suspend. We are not suspending, Mr. Speaker, human rights. We are not also suspending freedom to communicate. Mr. Speaker, I saw one member of parliament was invited to write a statement for, Mr. Speaker, postulating that the numbers could reach 10,000, Mr. Speaker, by May. And the next day, the ministry announced that the numbers could reach 10,000 by May. In fact, the only thing one would have asked is, did this member of parliament have a leakage of what the minister was doing, or he has certain good ways of working out statistics, Mr. Speaker, and should be incorporated in the national emergency team? Mr. Speaker, let people talk. Let people communicate. We are not going to accept that there will be misinformation or what, but let Kenyans talk. Let people, if we are going to be scared, maybe we'll be scared enough to stick to our houses, Mr. Speaker, and to follow the procedures that are required. Mr. Speaker, in the field of communication, civic education must be, Mr. Speaker, increased. I can tell you, even when I called my village today, there are many people in many parts of Kenya, in many villages, Mr. Speaker, they are still greeting themselves. They are still socializing, Mr. Speaker. They are still drinking busa in their community. They are saying this is a holiday for drinking busa, Mr. Speaker. They are oblivious of the dangers that come with this disease. Mr. Speaker, civic education must be done. But, Mr. Speaker, the provincial administration also, or the national administration, must take advantage of its structures to the village level to ensure that communication reaches to as many people as possible to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, we deal with this disease. Last, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that government must and should take, Mr. Speaker, all the experts we need and utilize, Mr. Speaker, all the leadership they have. Mr. Speaker, it is not enough. Although we have praised our former colleague, Senator Mutahi Kagwe, it's not enough to think that this coronavirus is being dealt by 1 or 2 ministers. We want to see the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, meeting more often, the cabinet having various committees, Mr. Speaker. That one that deals with finance, one that deals with energy. We want to see light being everywhere, Mr. Speaker. One that deals with agriculture. We want to see response on agriculture and livestock, how you continue to guarantee food coming, so that we don't reduce this to, 2 or 1 department of government. Government now must recalibrate itself to be a COVID responding government. Because, Mr. Speaker, the only thing we might end up doing in the next 2 years is dealing with the impact of this disease and, Mr. Speaker, responding to its impact in the economy, in, Mr. Speaker, all sectors in the country. And I dare say to the president that this is the time to call the leader of opposition, Mr. Speaker. This is the time to call all party leaders that are in the country, Mr. Speaker. This is the time, Mr. Speaker, for you to sit with your deputy president, Mr. Speaker. This is the time to sit more with your cabinet. There is no person in this country, Mr. Speaker, who should not go and sit on the table to provide solution to the problem. But if we think about that, if I call the leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, if I call the leader...
What is your point of order? You know, let's be careful about the points of order so that we have 1 hour to go.
I have only 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker, please, if you can restrict the point of orders so that I can sit.
What's your point of order?
If I keep responding to point of order...
No, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I just wanted to get clarity what he's talking about, because he's advising the president to sit with so-and-so, to sit with so-and-so, and there is nothing to show that he doesn't sit with them.
Order. That was very clear. It's just an example that he was giving. He doesn't have... Let's not interpret beyond what he has said.
What we need, Mr. Speaker, is to put aside our political competition and doing political scores with COVID. So that, Mr. Speaker, there should be nothing wrong with me and Orengo and people who are in the opposition or which political divide. They must, Mr. Speaker, find solution to the problems affecting Kenyans. This is not the time for dealing with politics. This is not the time to go to sectoral places. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy with this committee. This committee will play a role bipartisan. And I hope the National Assembly will also come up with a similar committee. They work together. They give solutions, Mr. Speaker. Myself and the minority leader will be available, Mr. Speaker, all the time for consultation with this committee. And when needed, that, Mr. Speaker, the House needs to be convened. Even before Tuesday next week, if that is required, we will convene the House for that purpose. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and ask the Senate, who is supposed, Senate Minority Leader, Mr. Speaker, sorry, I had been earlier advised that it was the deputy who was here. The Senate Minority Leader, Mr. Speaker, to second.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and in supporting this motion, I'll be very brief, since we have quite a number of us who want to contribute. First of all, Mr. Speaker, let me commend the government for the measures it has taken, but this motion is based on the fact that more could be done. But before I come to the main issues that I wanted to deal with, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that we are meeting as a parliament. Indeed, the Constitution does not imagine a situation where parliament should be adjourned sine die, like in the previous constitutional arrangement. In fact, if you go by Article 1 of the Constitution, the people want Parliament as the representative of the sovereign to be meeting all the time when there's a crisis. And I'm glad that we chose to meet when there's a crisis. And a lot of parliaments all over the world are meeting now as they delve into issues concerning COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, what it requires of us is now to think more innovatively about our standing orders. And I hope that after this, we'll begin to incorporate in our standing orders situations where Parliament cannot meet in plenary, like if there's a war situation or there's an emergency like the one we have now, how can we do the things that we must do without necessarily meeting in plenary or without necessarily meeting in the various committees. Therefore, I do think that this is an important statement, because out there people are saying, you know, members of Parliament are not meeting. They're not being seen. And you have seen in the United States of America, Donald Trump's his numbers are going higher because they can see him dealing with the problem, whereas the man in the opposition is not being seen because he is not part of the conversation that is going on. And for that, I also want to commend Senator Mutahi Kagwe, and I hope the press would be referring to him as senator, because that title never goes away. Never goes away. Mr. Speaker, the other point that I wanted to make is that this crisis, whatever the magnitude of the crisis, it should not take away our human rights. Our freedom should never be taken away because of a crisis. In fact, under the Constitution, if you want to limit any of the constitutional rights contained in the Bill of Rights, you need legislation which will require Parliament to meet. But I am a believer in the fact, like there's a justice in the United States of America who said, if you want to fight falsehood, you give more facts. Like in the situation where, a member of Parliament was arrested, it was simply, you resolve it just by talking about the factual situation instead of arresting the person. It's an easier way of resolving that problem. So I hope the state will continue to give more information as we go on fighting with this crisis. And for this, I want to commend the health workers, the doctors, the nurses, and even the police. And I want to appeal to the government that the police, being fast responders, they should make sure that when they go into a situation, they also don't risk their lives. They don't risk their health. Because in New York, we are told that many members of the New York Police Department are either reporting sick, and I think 1 or 2 of them have died from the virus. And the way the police are being exposed without protection is also part of a problem. They should have proper protection, just like our health workers should have proper protection. And in order for us to be able to do that, we need to plan for the worst. People are planning for the worst. If you want to deal with this crisis, you don't deal with the 50 cases that have come up. You deal, now they're talking about a possibility of having 10,000 cases. I think we should be talking about the need to have equipment and facilities even to deal with 100,000 or even more. Because if you look at the figures that are coming out in Northern Africa and in South Africa, we cannot say the situation is going to be better, because it's going to be worse before it can get better, like a lot of people are saying. So we need to plan ahead. And this committee, I think we are putting it in place so that they can be part of the conversation and in coming out with a solution. In fact, I've seen in the motion, which is quite right, that they should report back in 7 days. And we're hoping that when they report in 7 days, they are going to come out with measures, concrete measures, as a parliament, which we can put forward to the nation, that this is what the Senate, has come out with in terms of solutions.
Point of order. Point of order. Just one.
What's your point of order, Senator Kangata?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you limited my brother's time. I propose that you now give directions, not only to my brother Orengo, but for every other speaker. And I propose maybe 5 minutes.
I will give that direction. Just be patient.
Okay, thank you.
Senator.
Yeah, in fact, I know that I have about an hour. I will not get anywhere near that 1 hour. And seeing the mood of the House, everybody should really be hard on this issue. So all I'm saying is that let us plan for the worst, because the situation is going to get worse before it can get better. But there are immediate steps which should be taken, because if you're telling people not to go to their workplaces in the times they normally go to work, or probably there's going to be a lockdown, you have to plan for that lockdown. How are people going to eat? So that what is contained in this motion about making preparations of providing food for the most disadvantaged people, that must be in our plans now. Because a lot of people you've heard in the streets, they're saying, if you don't go to work, you don't go to the market, what are we going to eat? In places like Nairobi, we're telling people to wash their hands. I'm sure Honorable Sakaja, Senator Sakaja, must be the busiest, and I've seen you, the work you're doing in Nairobi together with your delegation. When you tell people to wash their hands, we must make sure that water is getting to where the populations are. In Kibera, in Mathare, let us see the water and sanitizers, and also in the counties. And finally, Mr. Speaker, we may need to rework the budget. the focus of this fight against the coronavirus should be actually be county-based. It's going to be more effective if it is done at the level of counties, so long as it's properly managed. So we may have to rearrange the budget so that, we can have these facilities in every county. We need an ICU bed almost in every county, not just here in Nairobi. We need facilities, including, facilities to do with provision of food and water at the county level. So, Mr. Speaker, this may require a budget appropriation, a supplementary appropriation budget, which of course must come from the other house. But I think the Senate, since these matters concern the counties, the Senate should be involved, and it is the work of this committee to come out clearly and strongly on what measures should be taken so that we are not seen to be talking, but to be coming with solutions. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I beg to support.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question, which is that the coronavirus COVID-19 has been declared a global health epidemic, resulting in an unprecedented global health crisis that has now manifested internationally in over 184 countries and territories, with escalating numbers of new cases being reported, with over 700 confirmed cases and over 30,000 deaths worldwide. Cognizant that governments and health authorities in the affected countries have taken various measures aimed at containing the spread of the pandemic, mainly through travel and behavioral restrictions, appreciating the policy measures and interventions taken by the government through the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus in containing the spread of the pandemic and cushioning Kenyans against economic effects of the pandemic, including its upscaling of medical facilities, imposing of travel restrictions, suspension of learning in all education institutions, changes in fiscal and monetary policies, and reinforcement behavioral protocols, cognizant that health services and other service sectors key to the implementation of the pronounced policy measures and interventions are devolved functions. Further, cognizant that some of the pronounced policy measures and interventions require legislative interventions and approval, recognizing the need for an integrated and multi-sectoral intervention by all levels and arms of government and sectors in society towards harmonized, comprehensive response to the pandemic, noting the bipartisan legislative approach taken by the legislatures in other jurisdictions in enhancing legislation towards the containment of the coronavirus and its attendant economic effects, conscious of the need to complement the efforts of the national government in containing the spread of the pandemic and cushioning Kenyans from shocks arising from the pandemic, the Senate resolves to 1. Laud the national government for the measures it has so far put in place in combating the spread of the virus. B. Commend and appreciate all healthcare workers in the country for their selfless effort, commitment to service, care, and compassion towards persons who have been infected or affected by the virus. C. Call upon the national government to expand the membership of the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus to include representations by Parliament, the Judiciary, the Council of Governors, the media, and private sector. D. Establish an ad hoc committee of the Senate which shall oversight actions and measures taken by the national and county governments in addressing the spread of the effect of COVID-19 in Kenya, and shall address the following among other matters. 1. Provision of testing and medical equipment, including adequate ventilators in referral hospitals and in at least one public hospital in each county. 2. Provision of adequate isolation centers and intensive care unit (ICU) facilities in each county. 3. Measures to ensure continuous supply of food and other essential commodities at affordable prices. 4. Measures to enable learners to education institutions to continue with their studies. 5. Measures to ensure protection, safety, and well-being of healthcare and other frontline workers. 6. Enhancement of capacity and flexible deployment of healthcare staff. 7. Financial assistance to vulnerable persons and groups. 8. Protection of residential and commercial tenants. 9. Establishment of stimulus package for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise. 10. Easing of legislative and regulatory requirements for doing business. 11. Measures to protect employees from retrenchment and job losses. 12. Uniform policies and procedures aimed at slowing and eventually stopping the spread of the virus. E. Appoint the following senators to the ad hoc committee. 1. Senator Johnson Sakaja, CBS MP. 2. Senator Michael Malinga Mbito, MP. 3. Senator Abshiro Soka Halake, MP. 4, Senator Mithika Linturi MP. 5, Senator Eric Ogong Omogeni, Senior Council MP. 6, Senator Architect Sylvia Moini Kasanga MP. 7, Senator Munyihaji Mohamed Faki MP. And that the committee tables a progress report within 7 days, and therefore tables a progress report thereafter on a weekly basis, and subsequently tables a final report within 6 months. The Senate resolves on 18, I'll now give the chair of Health Committee 5 minutes, and the rest of you will get 3 minutes. Chair Health. What's your point of order, Senator Ledama?
It's 4 o'clock. Stop. No point of order.
So you have switched on your mic so you can't. Please and be brief because we don't have time.
Yeah.
Switch on.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the following amendment to the motion. That the motion be amended in paragraph D of the proposed resolution by inserting a new paragraph 3A to read as follows. Measures to ensure that funds collected to combat the effect of COVID-19 be allocated to county governments for modernizing open-air markets in their respective counties to comply with the World Health Organization 1 meter social distancing. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reason why I bring that amendment is because when you travel to all our 47 counties, most pastoral communities depend on open-air markets. If you come to Nairobi, for instance, Mr. Speaker, sir, you will see the dangers when you go to a place like Kangemi, where everybody, it's business as usual. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, by inserting this paragraph 3A, will ensure that at least our county open-air markets and county governments are assisted.
Okay, Senator Ledam, I appreciate your contribution, but given the time frame that we have, and if we approve the committee, because this motion has not exhausted all the options, so I think let it flow.
Mr.
Then
Speaker,
we'll accommodate most of those things that will also be given at an appropriate time.
Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a very important amendment, and I don't see anything wrong. We don't need to debate it for long, but at least if it is
we have
noted,
less than Senator Ledama. We have less than 45 minutes.
I appreciate that, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I'm not arguing with you, Mr. Speaker. So all I'm saying is that it's a very simple matter, which is procedural, that can be seconded, and we move on.
Seconder.
Yes, I'll request Senator from Kisumu, Senator Outo, to second. Outa, Fred Outa.
Mr. Speaker, sir, point of order, point of suggestion.
Just say second.
You can do this. Bow. Bow is enough.
I second.
Okay, you will give me a copies for approval later on. Yeah.
We have so many other suggestions.
We vote on it.
Okay, other members, I think when we have such circumstances, let's appreciate that times are not, I mean, we are not in normal times. Okay, but let me propose a question, which is that the motion be amended in paragraph D of the proposed resolution by inserting a new paragraph 3A to read as follows.
No, we will continue.
I'm proposing the question.
You cannot propose a question when the amendment was not approved.
No.
Order.
Okay.
Order.
Continue.
Measures to ensure that funds collected to combat the effects of COVID-19 be allocated to the county government for modernizing open-air markets in their respective counties to comply with the WHO 1 meter social distancing.
Put the question.
Put the question, which is that the motion be amended in paragraph D of the proposed resolution by inserting a new paragraph 3A to read as follows: measures to ensure that funds collected to combat the effects of COVID-19 be allocated to the county governments for modernizing open-air markets in their respective counties to comply with WHO 1 meter social distance. As a manner of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As a manner of opposed, the contrary view, say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Chair of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
5 minutes.
Let me start by agreeing with the leader majority that this motion of forming the ad hoc committee has not really taken our work as a committee of health, and I wish to confirm to this House that as a committee, we have engaged the Cabinet Secretary of Health, we have engaged with the Cabinet Secretary of Transport. We also invited the Cabinet Secretary of Interior, who sent his PS, and we discussed a lot of issues to do with the COVID-19 outbreak. And already we are seeing results coming out, because now we have the flights being stopped. We are seeing proper isolation. So today I had a statement which covers some of the issues we had discussed with the Cabinet Secretaries on how to combat this very, very grave situation we have before us. But to save on time, all I'll want to just mention quickly here is that we must work together to ensure that we come and solve this grave situation before us. We have a situation whereby we are seeing the committee, the task force charged with this, with combating this issue, conducting their business and giving us reports, though we are not satisfied with the reports, because we feel like there's a lot of issues being covered, shrouded in secrecy, and we wish that some of these things come out clearly. So we as a committee will continue engaging the Minister for Health, the CS of Health, to ensure that this COVID-19 issue is brought to our control. Mr. Speaker, sir, we've seen that a lot of efforts are being put towards purchasing test kits, purchasing PPEs, protecting clothing, and all. But we are also worried as a committee that in that we will find that efforts are being put towards COVID, and we might end up forgetting that we already have our people who are suffering from malaria. We also have HIV patients. We also have TB patients. We want to make sure that as we move towards controlling this situation of COVID, we don't ignore this very, very important section of our people. Because, as you know, during the Ebola crisis, we found that there were more deaths that occurred due to malaria than to Ebola itself. So we should, as we look at controlling COVID, we should not forget that we also have the other issues. On the issue of procurement, we are not satisfied as a committee. We really want to know that what this money that we are contributing, including the 200 million the Senate has given today, what exactly is it being put into? Yeah, what are we purchasing? How many test kits are we purchasing? We know there's a very big shortage of test kits, but we also want to know the few test kits we have. How are we using it? Because we are busy isolating people, but are we testing them? Because if we don't test after isolating, then there's very little we are doing as a team. So those are the issues that we really wanted to share with the Senate and also share with the Ministry of Health, that we will continue pushing them to want to know that this procurement, these donations from the World Bank, we want to know that the money is being put to good use and we are distributing the equipment and the kits to the right places, to the hotspots. So with those few comments, I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Malala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this motion. And first of all, to commend the national government together with the county governments in trying to put measures, trying to curb the spread of COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we congratulate the national government, we would like to encourage them to ensure that they keep the common mwananchi at heart, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was disturbed by the manner in which the dusk to dawn curfew is being implemented, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've seen hordes of police officers harassing, beating up citizens of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as far as we want to implement these directives, let us implement these directives in the confines of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to support Honorable Murkomen on the issue of expanding the National Emergency Response Committee on COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, it is very important for us to expand that team and include legislators, Mr. Speaker. We need to have a representative of the Senate and a representative of the National Assembly on that committee, because the resolutions of that committee, Mr. Speaker, must be legislated. The policies that are going to be proposed in that committee must come to this House of these honorable members to be considered, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we do this, Mr. Speaker, I'll also want us to prepare for the worst. The Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, Mr. Speaker, has made projections that at the end of April, we might have 10,000 cases, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a point that we need to concentrate on and ask ourselves. I would like to encourage the ad hoc committee that is being formed. Kindly focus on the counties. As we know, health is a devolved function, and we are mandated as senators to protect the interest of our counties. I would also like to encourage the County Assembly Forum, which had suspended sittings of county assemblies indefinitely. I want to encourage them to consider that decision. Let the county assemblies reconvene and do supplementary budgets, Mr. Speaker, so that they can cater for those vote heads that they are not going to use before June, Mr. Speaker. We are going to have so many monies being returned to the Treasury just because some of the county assemblies have not done supplementary budget. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage county assemblies to reconvene and consider doing supplementary budgets so that we can absorb the monies meant for devolution.
Your time is up. Senator Sakaja. Senator Kangata, switch off your mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 3 minutes.
Switching off does not mean putting it, hiding the light. Switch off.
Mr. Speaker, I hope the timer is not running because I have not started. Mr. Speaker, Senator Kika is telling me to start, but that is not her work. Indeed, as Senator James Orengo has said, this is a time for leadership. And this move by the Senate to meet and to sit down, Mr. Speaker, when we were adjourning last week, I opposed the adjournment because I said all other countries, in fact, had a hit. The US Congress, the House of Commons, etc., are meeting. At a time of crisis is when leadership is needed. And those parliaments to this date have passed serious interventions. You know, Australia has a 46.3 billion fiscal stimulus that was passed by the parliament. Germany is talking about, you know, the Bundestag has passed interventions to cushion the poor. Canada has $37 billion to give small businesses. All of those are done in parliament. Even at a time of crisis, the right of the people, the sovereignty to be expressed and to be represented is not suspended. And so we must continue to work, of course, with innovation based on technology. Mr. Speaker, I will go very quickly to many points. As you know, Nairobi is ground zero. It is the hardest hit. We've not rested. We've been meeting. I've been able to bring together MPs, the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, and interacted with the ministries on a number of issues, Mr. Speaker. The first thing, Mr. Speaker, I must say is to offer condolences to the family of Yasin Moyo, a young man, 13 years old, who was shot and killed yesterday during this exercise of implementing the curfew, just from a meeting with the CS, Matiangi, and the PS and IG. And we've agreed, and I've made it clear that, Mr. Speaker, we are fighting Corona, not Kenyans. So in as much as both sides have something to do with it, Kenyans must know, and I'm appealing to Nairobians, the curfew is a reality. Because that boy was shot because of a stray bullet as a crowd was being dispersed who are pelting the police with stones. No one is on the right, but that life will never be found again. So all of us have some responsibility to know the curfew is not a joke. We must actually adhere to it, but also the police must serve the people. And tomorrow we'll be dealing with the family. The young man has been buried today. Mr. Speaker, some of the interventions that we've said we must make, and I'm glad the committee will do it. I hope the committee can be able to focus on some of these things. Number one is water. In the 17 constituencies of Nairobi, we have boreholes that are inactive because of very flimsy reasons. Some of them it's a motor, some of them it is just a mechanical part. We need immediate analysis of the status of those boreholes and for them to be reactivated. We need 510 water tanks urgently. Mr. Speaker, I've been appealing for this since the day we met. 510 tanks are needed in our slums. You're telling people to wash their hands. You put hand washing stations, but they have no water in their houses. So we've spoken to Nairobi Water to relax the rationing, and they've done it because the reservoirs are full. But we need 510 tanks in all of these places. There's 7 billion. I wish I knew the Senate was going to give 200 million. I'd have appealed for just 30 to make sure Nairobians can get water. Because if Nairobians get this infection, you can imagine what will happen to the rest of the country. And immediate facilitation of hand washing points. Mr. Speaker, food. Nairobi, if the people of Nairobi cannot access food, they have no farms, they have no, in the rural areas, maybe you can get some maize, you can get some greens. In Nairobi, you don't have it. We need urgent food rations, Mr. Speaker. The supply chain must be secured. We've agreed on that, and we're holding a meeting soon, Mr. Speaker, and I hope this committee can do it with the leaders of these markets and the leaders of posho mills. We have 1,600 or so posho mills. I have the database, and we need to subsidize at that point, such that what Nairobians get, because most of the people in the informal sector don't buy the food in supermarkets. They get what we call in Swahili ya kupima and oil. If we subsidize at that point and we have these names and we know which stores those are, we'll be able to help them. Mr. Speaker, that is extremely important. Some of the budgets must be reallocated and done by this House. Mr. Speaker, we cannot be talking about billions today for large infrastructure projects if we cannot feed the people in our informal settlements and our slums. That is immediate, that is urgent, we must do that. Mr. Speaker, we need economic cushioning. Fuel prices must go down. World oil fuel has gone down by 40%. Palm prices have gone down by only 2 shillings. That needs to be looked at. I have a huge night economy in this city. DJs, waiters, bartenders, musicians, bouncers, taxi drivers, etc. need to be cushioned. I beg for 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker, because of the...
1 minute.
1 minute. Mr. Speaker, the ban of Mitumba right now is making very many traders suffer. As we speak, there's millions of goods confiscated at the ICD. I've been talking to them. These goods had been paid for tax on the 9th of March. They are serving no one's interest being held at ICD. Mr. Speaker, there is a regulation, and that's why Senator Ledama's intervention might have been overtaken, because the public finance management regulations have been published, and in those regulations, Section 4.2 talks about these actions that the committee should actually be pushing for, Mr. Speaker. Finally, the transport sector, they are not able today, because of the reduced number of people in the matatus, they are not able to pay the fees, the seasonal fees for matatus. An 80-seater does 8,000, 14-seater is 3650, 33-seater. We ask for those to be suspended for now, and urgent need for appropriation. So, long and short, Mr. Speaker, because now I'm wrapping, and there are so many things that I wanted to say, including sanitizers and the issue of health community workers, community health volunteers, and there are thousands who can help. Mr. Speaker, I hope the committee will go into the detail of this and be able to report back to the House, and that we can work together with the committee in the National Assembly. Let's remember, not every Kenyan has the luxury to be able to work at home. Nairobi won't get into pandemic after lockdown. It is already in pandemic and people are suffering. Thank you.
Senator Mtula Kiloza Jr.
Point of order. Very important.
Let's proceed.
Not allowed.
No. Allow me to proceed.
Senator, proceed.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. First is to, of course, condole with the families that have lost loved ones during the curfew. Curfew is now competing with Corona in terms of deaths. In fact, curfew is now leading. Second, Mr. Speaker, for the first time, the narrative must change, because Kenyans are now getting the disease. The epidemiology shows that it's no longer the people who traveled abroad that have the disease. Is now communicated between person to person, and therefore the message must change, that we must clean our knobs, we must clean our tables, we must clean our doors, we must clean every place where everybody is touching. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we must get to a place, the ministry doesn't want to communicate, but we must get to a place where everybody is wearing a mask like South Africa. We must get EPZ. I saw a clip about the county Kitui producing masks. I don't know how true that is, but the president and the government and through Mutahi Kagwe, we must find a method where cloth masks are available because they can be cleaned. On preparedness, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to report, and the Committee of Health must listen to this, that the government has provided 4,000 interns, 5,000 skilled workers, another 1,000, but the county governments have not been able to recruit. Only 3 counties have complied. The money might return to Treasury if nothing happens. Mr. Speaker, it has been proposed, in fact, because Kirinyaga is fighting with the County Assembly on the County Public Service Board, Kitui the same, whether this committee can ask the Public Service Commission to hire these interns and these skilled workers so that we are prepared. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, only 3 counties have complied with isolation. Only 3. It's very sad. And this is something the committee must return to us, a verdict as to why the counties have been unable to comply. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, only 3 counties in Kenya can do testing. Only. Certification can only be given to 3 counties, Kisumu, Machakos, and Mombasa. Why? Those are things that this committee must tell us so that, Mr. Speaker, by the time we come back, we do not want to say that health is a devolved function and governors are sleeping on the job. Mr. Speaker, on the question of how we cushion the public, Mr. Speaker, after we finish COVID, people want to go to school, students are supposed to pay loans, people are supposed to pay their mortgages. This committee, make no mistake, you're not just a health committee. You're supposed to provide with stimulus for the country. And ACEPAC has given a very good document on the sort of stimulus that we need of micro enterprises, people not waiving loans for 3 months, extending payment of loans for 1 year. Mr. Speaker, but lastly, can we find a method where we can work virtually? Whether it's Senate, whether it's the county assemblies, Mr. Speaker, and I'm concerned that the Ministry of Health is telling us that now that Senate is meeting and they have confirmed cases of National Assembly, whether it's going to set a bad precedent. Mr. Speaker, we must be tested. We must be tested. I repeat, we must be tested if we must continue working. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Senator Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. First and foremost, I also want to thank the national government and the Ministry of Health for doing a good job. Mr. Speaker, sir, if we have to comply with the rules, this House must start complying with the rules first and foremost. We are the ones who are not complying with the rules. Look at this House. Half of the members are not even wearing masks. Why were these masks provided if you are not wearing them? The spread of the virus is by touching, of course, by air. It's airborne. It can stay for more than 4 hours to 8 hours. When I talk like this, droplets, if God forbid, I don't have it. I'm not aware. But if it happens, it can go up to 10 feet. This guy is in danger. She's in danger. He's in danger. Okay? That is the dreaming time. Somebody in California who was 19 years old died. 2 small kids have died. This thing does not have age limit. It does not have color. It does not talk about strength. So don't cheat yourselves. The only way we can stop this spread is by using the masks you have been provided for. Look at the members. Look at the staff. They're walking around here with no masks. First and foremost, we should be able to comply with that, Mr. Speaker. Number 2, the health committee has its purpose, but this job, most of these things have been given to the ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee is multi-purpose, multi-agency. It should do most of those works. The health committee, with its vice chairman who's close to 58, and its chairman who's not given opportunity, should relax while the ad hoc committee does its job. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenyans are not very serious people. We have a lot of problems. You talk to most of the people, they tell you, these things are things of the Wazungus, things from somewhere else. We are not getting it. We are going to be in a serious issue. People are talking of 10,000. I don't want to say something which might annoy others. But I am afraid in May we will be talking of other numbers, not 10,000. If we continue the way we are continuing, Mr. Speaker, and things will be worse, I urge the national government and the county government. Like my county is employing some useless people who are not needed instead of employing ministry or instead of employing health personnel, Mr. Speaker. They want to employ a clerk here, another assistant, Suji Wat here, people who are not needed. The county government should employ health personnel and make sure that they are able to do whatever they need to do. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to food, hungry people are angry people. Kenyans in Nairobi, Kenyans in the rural areas, Kenyans in the slums are going to be very angry people very soon, because the way we are going now, we are talking of quarantine and curfew. We will go to lockdown, the way Uganda has gone, the way Rwanda has gone, the way many countries have gone. The lockdown has helped Italy. Things are going down. The lockdown is helping Spain. I don't know whether it is the truth. I saw something in the social media of police officers going around collecting everybody who's above 50 years old and putting them in jail. It might be fake news, but it might be fake news, but it might come to that very soon. So, for those ones who can afford to stay in quarantine, you stay. There are others who don't have that luxury, Mr. Speaker, sir. Those ones who don't have that luxury of food and paying for their rent and whatever, if we don't take care of them very soon, we are going to have angry people beating about those ones who want to hide themselves in their houses. The government should take action soon. The county government need to do more. They are not doing anything. As Honorable Mutura said, they are sleeping on the job. The governors should wake up. The Council of Governors should wake up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chila yako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to make my remarks on this very important matter. Mr. Speaker, I want to go straight to quarantine, and I also want to go straight to curfew. Mr. Speaker, without debating the illegality or legality of the curfew which is in court, I don't think that it's possible to have a one-fit-all solution to this country. You cannot think that curfew that is applying or applicable in Nairobi is applicable in Mandera or applicable in Migori. Talking about Migori, we have poor widows who are looking after families. These widows sell fish, and the fish is only purchased between 6 and 9 o'clock at night. They do not have savings. They do not have anything to eat. We are imposing curfew on them. They have children who are crying at home. They have orphans they are looking after. In Migori and most counties in Nyanza, we depend on fishing. Fishing is also done at night. I try to wonder, this person who suggested curfew for the nation, what activities do people do at night that bring crowds? Is it sex or what is it? If we can identify these activities and outlaw them, then we might as well allow other people who are doing lawful activities where you can keep the sufficient social distance to operate. You cannot just lock people down, and you cannot prevent them from doing things that feed them, hoping that they will be able to cooperate. I am foreseeing a situation that after 5 or 10 days, we will have people killing policemen and women, and we do not want to deal with one problem which is likely to escalate to another. So this committee that we are putting together must find a mechanism of urging government, the executive government, the interior, to engage counties and find out what kind of curfew can work in each county, so that you do not have one blanket curfew that is covering from Lodwar to Lunga or covering Wajir up to Busia. We must be able to protect life and also livelihood of our people, or else we'll deal with very angry people. Now, Mr. Speaker, because of time, I'll go to another. I want to laud you and your team for donating or returning to a treasury for reallocation to corona users 200 million. But I have a modification that I want to suggest. Let us divide that money among counties. I expect 4 million for my county, so that it can be used in every county to do certain things that are useful. I am sure the person running the national show will only see what he's able to see, and it's probably Nairobi. So each county, Makueni, your own county, Bungoma, and other counties deserve a portion of this money. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
Senator Naomi. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for allowing me to add my voice to very important motion. Mr. Speaker, I support the motion and the committee, the ad hoc committee. I have a lot of faith in the list that has been presented to us, and I believe that they will do the task which is ahead of them. Mr. Speaker, I also want to laud the national government for the measures that it has taken and for the work that they are currently doing. At the same time, again, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate and commend the health workers who have sacrificed themselves and doing a lot of work on our behalf and serving the nation faithfully. Mr. Speaker, I believe that as a government we'll be able to look at their welfare, we'll be able to protect them, we'll be able to provide for all their needs. Mr. Speaker, I just want to take our attention to the many Kenyans who live out of the cities, those who live in rural areas, who cannot even afford a set of TV or radio in their homes. Some of them are not even aware of what is happening in the other world. Mr. Speaker, like in Marsabit, we have people who live in rural areas, who live in small villages and are not aware. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I suggest that the county government takes the responsibility of creating enough awareness and make sure that they do enough campaigns by sending vehicles to villages with that information so that our people can be well prepared of what COVID-19 entails. Mr. Speaker, again, the issue of water is a very sensitive one. As it has already been suggested, the Ministry of Water and the county government can take up the responsibility of providing enough water. We have some counties with a lot of challenges in that area, and all the sanitization area, so that the Ministry of Water can take up, and the county, so that they can take care of the citizens in their area. Mr. Speaker, much has been said on the funds that can be allocated. Sometimes when you look at some of the pastoralist areas, you wonder whether they'll be able to be given enough attention. I suggest that equal attention be given to all the counties and all the rural areas so that our people will not suffer because of COVID-19, which is already affecting the entire world. Mr. Speaker, what is happening in our nation, but the police brutality is not good. I just want to say that we've already lost 2 people, and the man who was killed the first day as a result of police brutality, I understand he took a woman to the hospital, a woman who was in labor, and I want to speak on behalf of the women in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, labor comes anytime, and now that there is this curfew, the government should provide ways that women can be supported so that in case they are in labor, any district hospital or any hospital that is close to them can provide that services that they require. Mr. Speaker, again, the issue of education, I want to mention something on that before I conclude, because we have candidates who are preparing for the exams. Some of them are already living in great dilemma. They don't know what is ahead of them. I suggest that the Ministry of Education puts things clear so that the parents and the candidates who are living in anxiety can be helped psychologically so that they can prepare themselves, and so that we can comfort even the students who are there. Mr. Speaker, we know that many Kenyans are needy. We have a lot of women who are in business and their businesses have been cut down. Let us take care of all the needy cases in our society and see how best we can support them during this time. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Senator Kabaka.
We extend time. Point of order, we extend time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
What's your point of order, Senator?
Pursuant to Standing Order 1, Mr. Speaker, I hereby beseech you that you exercise your power to extend times with about 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Number two, also ask those already who are in the list to yield to members who are not in that committee.
On the extension of time, I don't think I will do that because of other extraneous factors. You know, the curfew is on. You're the one who is talking about, we are not advocating for police brutality, but I cannot guarantee that it will not happen. So we want to observe time. Senator Kabaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support this motion. I have 3 points, very fast. Mr. Speaker, sir, there's the issue which the banks, through the relevant statutes, the Banking Act and the Central Banking Act, that they need to actualize without issuing some statement in the newspapers that concerned customers, should get in touch in the event they have some repayment challenge. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think we need to anchor it in law that in situation of this nature, and I'm aware that under the Frustration of Contracts Act, the laws of Kenya, which also is a statute of general application as to where, Mr. Speaker, sir, speaks volumes about how these contracts need to be tackled. But of necessity, there is a need to suspend, subject to revisal of these contracts, that there be a moratorium and suspension of the payment of interest, or rather of these loans. Number two, Mr. Speaker, sir, it has been said, but it's very important that I also emphasize that we've seen the police brutality. I have seen the violation of the Bill of Rights, Chapter 4, which is well catered under Articles 19 to 51. And I've seen that in this country we have suspended this provision of the law. It has become a police state in this situation, and shouldn't be. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, it's high time that this Senate summons the Interior CS together with the IG to come and explain and elucidate on this aspect. Mr. Speaker, sir, lastly, there is the issue of, I've seen the World Bank give a lot of money to the government, 6 billion, and I'm sure other donors are following suit. And it's high time this money, there be accountability for this money. Because this country, we have seen people are corrupt, and I'm not casting any aspersion. This money may disappear. This is a time people make, in times of this crisis, that people become, who line their pockets and become millionaires when people are suffering. We want accountability and the equal distribution of these monies to 8 counties. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Rose Nyamunga, 2 minutes, because we have to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I just want to add my voice to many people who have supported, who have congratulated the President and everybody in authority of the steps that they've taken since the outbreak of this COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, my simple point is people, the rural poor. If we don't put it in place and understand how any information or any support is going to reach the rural poor, I think we will not be doing justice to this nation. And secondly, apart from the rural poor, even the urban poor, we need to make sure that our people who are mostly affected, because some of us, maybe we have food in our stores, but there are people who live from hand to mouth. They must go to work, and it is very critical. So we must take care of these people. And apart from that, lastly, Mr. Speaker, you know very well that apart from the COVID-19, we also have the floods that has already set itself in Kenya. Many people have suffered, more so from Kisumu County, Busia County. These are counties which are really suffering right now. And if you combine the COVID-19 together with the floods, people have been misplaced. There are a lot of suffering going on in the rural areas, in some specific areas of this republic. I would like to urge the Ministry of Devolution, together with the Ministry of Health, that much as we want to concentrate on the COVID-19, it is important that we also extend a hand, and a very critical hand, to people who are suffering from floods. It is out there, the roads have been broken, people have been displaced, Mr. Speaker, and it is a very sad state of affairs. So, Mr. Speaker, I support everything, even the money that has been donated by the Senate to take care of the pandemic. But how is it going to reach the rural people? How is this money going to be spent? Is it going to be used for the intended purpose, or as usual, it will go in a few hands and the right people are not going to benefit? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I know there's still an interest, but we only have 5 minutes. We have to, the movers to reply, and I have to put the question. So I now call the mover to reply.
Is this? Say 1 minute. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to reply. And Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that we didn't have time to contribute to this important motion. And I think Kenyans are really watching. They are excited, but time does not allow us. Mr. Speaker, I think this committee has a lot of work to be done. It's not a matter of maybe looking at what the extent or the problem of corona or the strategies that are being employed. Mr. Speaker, there is a bigger problem in this country that we really need to look at. Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of donors that are contributing money. Government is putting in a lot of money. And I think it's important for the committee to sit with the National Steering Committee and see how that money is allocated to the counties so that it can help Kenyans. Number two, Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said. Issues of water, especially in rural areas, it's a big problem. For some of us who come from pastoral communities, we don't even get water. Mothers are actually tracking 1 hour or 2 hours to get to water. But how are they going to help themselves this time of corona? A lot needs to be done. Children are at home. They need actually to study. They need to sit for their exams. How are you going to handle all this? Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to thank all the members who have done their contribution. But the committee, I know they have the ability and also enough energy to make sure that this House is active and look into the issues of oversight as required by law. Because I know most of the counties are going to misuse the budgetary allocation for their own interest instead of helping ordinary Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I think we'll have to give enough time to the committee and a lot of cooperation to make sure that they have done the right thing, and also advise Kenyans and advise this committee so that Senate is seen that it's on top of things when Kenya is in dire need of help. I thank you.
Take your seat, Senator. Other members, I now put the question, which is that aware that the coronavirus COVID-19 has been declared a global health epidemic resulting in an unprecedented global health crisis that has now manifested internationally in over 184 countries and territories, with escalating numbers of new cases being reported, with over 700 confirmed cases and over 30,000 deaths worldwide. Cognizant that the governments and health authorities in the affected countries have taken various measures aimed at containing the spread of the pandemic, mainly through travel and behavioral restrictions. Appreciating the policy of measures and interventions taken by government through the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus in containing the spread of the pandemic and cautioning Kenyans against economic effects of the pandemic, including upscaling of medical facilities, imposition of travel restrictions, suspension of learning in all educational institutions, changes in fiscal and monetary policies, and reinforcement behavioral protocols, cognizant that health services and other services sectors key to the implementation of the pronounced policy measures and interventions are devolved functions. Further, cognizant that some of the pronounced policy measures and interventions require legislative intervention and approval, recognizing the need for an integrated and multi-sectoral intervention by all levels and arms of government and sectors of society towards a harmonized, comprehensive response to the pandemic, noting the bipartisan legislative approach taken by legislatures in other jurisdictions in enacting legislation towards the containment of the coronavirus and its attendant economic effects, conscious of the need to complement the efforts of the national government in containing the spread of the pandemic and cushioning Kenyans from the shocks arising from the pandemic, the Senate resolves to, 1, A, laud the national government for measures it has so far put in place in combating the spread of the virus. B, commend and appreciate all healthcare workers in the country for their selfless efforts, commitment to service, care and compassion towards persons who have been infected or affected by the virus. C, call upon the national government to expand the membership of the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus to include representation by Parliament, the Judiciary, the Council of Governors, media, and private sector. D, establish an ad hoc committee of the Senate which shall oversight actions, measures taken by the national and county governments in addressing the spread and effects of COVID-19 in Kenya, and shall address the following among others. 1, provision of testing and medical equipment, including adequate ventilators in referral hospitals and in at least one public hospital in each county. 2, provision of the adequate isolation centers of intensive care unit facilities in each county. 3, measures to ensure continuous supply of food and other essential commodities at affordable prices. 4, measures to enable learners in education institutions to continue with their studies. 5, measures to ensure protection, safety, and well-being of healthcare and other frontline workers. 6, enhancement of capacity and flexible deployment of healthcare staff. 7, financial assistance to vulnerable persons and groups. 9, protection of residential and commercial tenants. 9, establishment of a stimulus package for the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise. 10, easing of legislative and regulatory requirements for doing business. 11, measure to protect employees from retrenchment and job losses. 12, uniform policies and procedures aimed at slowing and eventually stopping the spread of the virus. E, appoint the following senators to the ad hoc committee. 1, Senator Johnson Sakaja, CBS, MP. 2, Senator Michael Malinga Mbito, MP. 3, Senator Bshiro Soka Halake, MP. 4, Senator Mithika Linturi, MP. 5, Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, Senior Counsel, MP. 6, Senator Architect Silva Mweni Kasanga, MP. 7, Senator Mwinyihaji Mohamed Faki, MP. Under the committee tables a progress report within 7 days, and thereafter tables a progress report on a weekly basis, and subsequently tables a final report within 6 months. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many are of a contrary view, say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, it is now 4:30 p.m., time to interrupt the business of the Senate. The House therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 7th April 2020 at 2:30 p.m.